Friends and family, on the next edition of the Carolina Sports Guy, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. Oh, I'm not talking about Clint Eastwood. I'm talking about the history of every quarterback who's ever played in at least one game for the Carolina Panthers. Before we get into today's content, make sure you pound that like button. You subscribe to this channel. It's free, doesn't cost anything. Hit the bell icon and you'll get more content just like what's in this video. Alright folks, today we're going to be covering, Uncle Chucky here is going to be covering the Carolina Panthers. We're going to be talking about the history of the Carolina Panthers. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is we're going to look at 20 quarterbacks. We've had 20 quarterbacks and the 26, 27-year history of the Carolina Panthers who've actually played in a game. Now, of these 20 quarterbacks, I've rated 10 of them where they weren't really given a rating. Maybe they didn't play long enough. Maybe they were put in a position where they were thrust into the game, and it's kind of hard to say they were good. It's kind of hard to say they were bad, and even say they were ugly. It was kind of a no grade given. And there's going to be speculations because some of these you might agree with me, some you might disagree. I've got a few people who have given an ugly grade to, and you might think, why'd you give them an ugly grade when their stats, the amount of games they played in, and their interception to touchdown ratio was about the same as another guy that you gave a no grade given to. And there's going to be reasons for that. There's a history to it. So we're going to break it down. Okay? First quarterback we're going to look at, going back to the inaugural 1995 season, was none other than the current Colts head coach, former Buffalo Bill, and yes, for one season, played in 3 games, a guy by the name of Frank Reich. Frank Reich started the first 3 games in Carolina Panther history. He amassed a total of 441 passing yards in those 3 games. He threw 3 touchdowns. He threw 3 interceptions. And his record was 0-3. Now, I remember the very first game the Panthers were in. Kept us in the game pretty much. And I believe if it wouldn't have been for a false start by an offensive lineman that we had late in the game, we were going in for the winning score. We had to settle for a field goal. The game goes to overtime, and we lose in the old Georgia Dome by a field goal in overtime. But he didn't look terrible in that game. Second, third game, not so much. He didn't look good at all. I believe one of these games might have been against Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. So for Frank Reich's grade, we're going to give him an NG, which is no grade. He didn't play long enough. He kind of was an holdover until we talk about the next guy. The next guy on the list is a guy by the name of Carrick Collins. Carrick Collins came to the Panthers. He was the very first draft pick in Carolina Panther history. He was the first round pick out of Penn State. He was our future. Now, we could have had different people who we could have drafted. If I'm not mistaken, I think Steve McNair might have been there. Could be wrong, but Carrick Collins was the pick. Excuse me. He played from 1995 to 1998. After 3 games, the Panthers head coach and staff, Dom Capers, they felt he was ready to be a starter. He ended up accumulating a total of 45 games for the Carolina Panthers. He had a record of 22 wins and 20 losses, which means in one of those games he really didn't get the win or the loss. He kind of came in relief. He had an overall record of 1-1 in the playoffs, where we beat Dallas, our very first playoff game in 1996, and he lost to Green Bay in Lambeau Field in the freezing cold to Brett Favre, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So it's kind of hard to find fault in him there. Now, he amassed a total of 8,306 yards. He passed for 47 touchdowns, 54 interceptions. Not really great stats. You want to see more TDs and interceptions. But for our short history, and since we have more losing seasons or more 500 seasons than we do winning seasons, we're going to basically say that Carrick Collins is one of our 4 guys who are going to get a good. Definitely during that second season, a magical year where we finished 12-4 and won the NFC West before we were placed in the NFC South, Carrick Collins was magical. Played pretty well. Then he had a bit of a drinking problem. Had a racial slur, would have been a bigger impact today if it had been said, especially with social media booming, to one of the receivers. That was said in the media. He had to answer to that and apologize. He kind of distanced a lot of teammates. He ended up being cut. He went into the head coach's office, said basically he didn't want to play anymore. Well, he ends up signing later that year for the Saints, the dreaded New Orleans Saints. Then he went on to have a more illustrious career where he got the Giants to the Super Bowl as a game manager. And also the Tennessee Titans. He had some good years with them. But Carrick Collins, we're going to leave it at that. He could have done had a better record with the Panthers if he would have stayed longer. He just went through a lot of things that I guess being a young guy, he wasn't ready to really lead an expansion team. Third on the list is Steve Burling. He played from 1996 to the year 2000. He played in a total of 59 games for the Panthers. He amassed 12,690 yards. He was a gunslinger. 86 touchdowns to 50 interceptions. So by far better than Carrick Collins with the touchdown to interception ratio. But his record was 23-28. We had some pretty abysmal teams, some terrible defenses, score a lot of points, but would give up a lot of points. Now, we're going to rate him as good. One of the bad things is George Seifert and him, I don't think saw eye to eye. George Seifert wanted to go in a younger direction, and that was going to be George Seifert's downfall. But we're going to give Steve Burling a rate of good, basically because of how well he did play. Fourth quarterback, it's one we drafted in the later rounds, Chris Weinke. Played with the Panthers from 2001 to 2002, had another stint in 2006. Played in a total of 27 games for the Panthers. He did amass 3,800 total yards passing, 14 touchdown passes, 26 interceptions. And here's the kicker that's even the worst. He had an overall record for the Panthers of 2-17. That's right, 2-17. Now, all of that can't be piled onto him. In fact, the year we went 1-15, Weinke played the majority of those games. Unfortunately, we're going to have to give Chris Weinke out of Florida State, we're going to have to give him the ugly. He's one of the few quarterbacks in Carolina Panthers history that's going to be given the ugly. Fifth quarterback on the list, I hope I'm saying his name right, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he passed away about a year ago as I'm recording this video. That was Matt Lytle. 2001, he played in a total of 3 games. He amassed a total of 133 yards passing. And an 0-1 record. So yeah, he had a couple of mock duties where he really didn't do much, but he had one game that mattered that he started in. 0-1 record. Threw 1 touchdown pass, 3 interceptions. Now I'm going to give him a rating as bad. It's not as bad as Chris Weinke. Probably would have been a non-rated guy because he doesn't have much film to look at. Starting 1 game, going 0-1, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. But the reason why he's given the bad, Steve Burling should have never been let go by George Seifert. He saw something in Lytle, wasn't the case. It didn't work. He was never the quarterback of the future. That was a big mistake. Should that be more on Seifert and the Panthers coaching staff than Lytle? Sure. But he's going to be given a mark of bad. One of the 2 quarterbacks given the mark of bad. Next is Rodney Peete. Rodney Peete out of USC. Came to us 2002 to 2003, played in 16 overall games for the Panthers. He amassed a winning record of 8-7. Passed for 2,652 yards. So he was more of a game manager. 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. There you go, mediocre stats again. But to give him a non-graded grade for Rodney Peete, and didn't have but the 1 year. I really kind of go back and look at him. He was pulled in the first game of 1 season, and that's when Jake Delhomme came in and lit a fire and had a comeback. So it's kind of given a not rated grade, and we're going to leave it at that because it was kind of mediocre, like the Panthers were during that time. Next quarterback on the list is Randy Fasani. 2002, Played the 1 year. He played in 4 games, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, total 171 yards passing in these 4 games. Had an 0-1 record. So he accumulated most of the yards in that 0-1 record. We're going to give him a rating of ugly. It was terrible, folks. 4 interceptions.
Nothing for you.
He looked sick. And we're going to move on from there. Next, Jake Delhomme. Jake Delhomme played, I believe, at Louisiana Lafayette, if I'm not mistaken. He signed as a free agent by the New Orleans Saints. Sat on the bench, I believe, got in some games for them, threw a touchdown pass or 2. But he came as a free agent to the Carolina Panthers in 2003 to be a backup. Gets in the first game in Jacksonville when we're behind, leads us to a comeback. The thing about Jake Delhomme that's better than any other Panther quarterback we've ever had, he had this certain fire. And I know Cam Newton did, but it was something about Jake when he got in the game, like, you're not going to beat me no matter what. He was a talker. 2003 to 2009, amassed 19,258 yards passing, threw a total of 120 touchdown passes and 89 interceptions. And a 53-37 record during his stint with the Panthers. His playoff record was the best for the Panthers. 8 playoff games, had a record of 5-3. Plus, he got us to Super Bowl 38. Had a magical game. John Casey doesn't kick the ball out of bounds. That Super Bowl goes to overtime. I can imagine if the Panthers get the ball, Delhomme would have let us down to a score. But it wasn't to be. Tommy John injuries we had, Atlanta Falcons. I remember John Abraham kind of ruined his career. And then he had a terrible playoff game against Arizona on his birthday where he threw, 4 or 5 interceptions. It's never the same after that. But we're going to give Jake Delhomme a rating of good. He was a good quarterback. He really got something to hang on to as Panther fans. Next on the list, Vinny Testa. And Vinny Testa was signed. He was an aging quarterback. Played 7 games for the Panthers. Jake Delhomme got hurt. 2007 season. Vinny comes in, throws 952 yards. He had 5 touchdown passes for us, 6 interceptions. We're going to say no grade given on him as well. Came in relief, had some good moments, really didn't get us too far of anywhere. I didn't even put down the record, what his record was for us. Not sure what it was. I'm sorry, I don't have that information. Next in the same year is David Carr. Yes, Derek Carr's younger brother. David Carr, who was the first overall pick of the Houston Texans in their very first inaugural season. He had a total of 635 yards passing in 2007 for the Panthers. Had his white gloves. 6 games he played in, he had a 1-3 record for the Panthers. 3 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. So we're going to say a no grade given on David Carr as well. We thought he was going to be more. Thought he was going to come in and see what he had. He kind of was washed up by the time Houston got him sacked so many times. So when he came to us, his career was basically done. Next on the list, I'm going to shudder. It's the second round pick we had, 2010, Jimmy Clausen. Jimmy Clausen from Notre Dame got in 13 games, 1,558 yards passing, 3 touchdown passes in those 13 games. 9 interceptions. He was a game manager, and he didn't manage them very well. His overall record in those 13 games, remember, he only started 10 of them. 1 win and 9 losses. Hideous. Hideous. So the rating for Jimmy Clausen is going to be a big U for ugly. Yes, Clausen was a terrible mistake. Drafted Almonte Edwards in that draft as a former quarterback, used as a kick returner receiver, never panned out. Clausen in the second round, quarterback didn't pan out. We even drafted Tony Pike in the 5th or 6th round from Cincinnati. He never even got in a game. Terrible draft for the Panthers that year. Next on the list, Brian St Pierre, 2010. Jimmy Clausen was pulled or didn't get in this game. Brian St Pierre played in 1 game. He had an 0-1 record. He did have 173 yards passing, 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions. Not good, but not really ugly. I'm not going to give him bad. Played in 1 game. We're going to give him a no grade given, and in our non-rated grade for Brian St Pierre. Number 14, the greatest quarterback in Carolina Panther history, if not the greatest player, Cam Newton. Number 1 overall pick from Auburn. Heisman Trophy winner, 2011 first-round pick, number 1 overall, like I said. Played 125 games for the Panthers from 2011 to 2019. Had a 68, 55, and 1, the one tie we had against Cincinnati, record. Now, he had a 3-5 playoff record, which wasn't as good as Jake's, but he had a more dominating season than Jake ever had. In that 2015, he was the league MVP. He was unstoppable. 35 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns. Incredible season. 182 touchdown passes, 182 passing touchdowns. 108 interceptions. 58 rushing touchdowns. I'm going to put it in because that was a big part of his game, which is going to elevate him to the best quarterback we've ever had. And he almost had 5,000 rushing yards for the Panthers, 4,800. And I don't think I might have mentioned this earlier. I apologize if I did. His passing yardage was 29,041 yards. Okay, but we're going to give Cam Newton, number 1, the good rating, the G, because he was definitely worth the price of admission. Great player, mad respect, even if he's not with the Panthers anymore. He'll always go down, to me, as Carolina Panthers. Next, his serviceable backup, Derek Anderson. We didn't know Cam Newton was going to start the first year he came in the league. We thought maybe he'd have to sit a half a year or 1 year. Thought Derek Anderson was a good backup. He played at Cleveland, had a meltdown there. In 2014, 2016, those 2 years, Derek Anderson got in some games. Played in 25 overall games for the Panthers, but he only had 4 games where he started. I say 5, but really 4 that he played the most in. He had a 2-2 record. 1,265 yards passing, 7 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I loved Anderson as a great backup. I thought at one time he was the best backup in the league. We're going to give him a non-grade given, as he really didn't play long enough to warrant any type of grade. Next on the list is Taylor Heinicke from Old Dominion. 2018. Played in 1 game for the Carolina Panthers, had an 0-1 record. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was against Atlanta, and they broke his elbow, broke his arm. He had 220 passing yards in his career with the Panthers. 1 touchdown pass thrown, 3 interceptions. Going to give him a non-grade. He didn't play long enough. Of course, he played with the Washington football team this past year. Looked pretty good in the game against us, even though we beat him, and then he had a comeback win and looked pretty good for him in another game. Then we're going to look at Kyle Allen out of Houston, 2018-2019. 15 games, 6-7 record, 3,588 yards, 19 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. But we're going to give him a non-grade. I know you're looking, man, he was 6-7. You got guys with worse records than that. 3,500 yards passing, 19 touchdown passes. Just not going to give him a grade. Everybody came out with this expectation when he took over for Cam that he might even be better than Cam, and he wasn't. It's kind of a letdown. He really was a game manager, and we kind of covered for his flaws. So we're not going to give him a grade at all. And next on the list is the last ugly we're going to have, and that's Will Greer, and he's still on the squad. Will Greer, if you're going to come off this ugly list, you better do something in training camp and try to get in the game, because right now you're looking like one of the worst draft picks Marty Hurney ever had. We gave up too much to pick you. Will Greer, from the Charlotte area, went to college in Florida, transferred to West Virginia. 2019, he played in 2 games. This is after Ron Rivera got fired, sitting on his ass, and the assistant coaching staff put him in. 228 yards passing, 0 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions, 0-2 record. Get a big U for him.
Nothing for you.
Not to even throw a passing touchdown. I still regret to this day Gardner Minshew being on the board. Played for my beloved East Carolina Pirates, later transferred to Washington State. He's had a lot more touchdown passes and drafted much later. Will Greer, wasted draft pick. It's ugly. Ugly. Number 19, Teddy Bridgewater. I'm glad Teddy's gone. Yeah. He is a serviceable backup quarterback. At times he can look decent, but he's not a game leader. He's a game manager if you got the game in hand. 2020, he played in a total of 15 games, having a record of 4-11, 3,733 yards. Yeah, he can get the ball to his receivers at times. I just think how many more yards if we had a better quarterback we would have had between Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson. Threw for 15 touchdowns, very manageable, 11 interceptions. We're going to give him an overall rating of bad. I'm sorry. A lot of people want to give him non-grade given. At this rate, we would have been better off hanging on to Cam even with his injuries than bringing Teddy for the money we spent for him and the games we left on the table. I know some was up to the kicker. Defense gave up a couple, but really a lot of games were mismanaged by Teddy Bridgewater. That's why I got to give him the rating of bad. And finally, 20th quarterback to play in Carolina Panther history up to this point, which we'll have a new one this year in 2021. But the 20th we've had play is P.J. Walker. P.J. Walker, 2020, 3 games played, 1 game started, a 1-0 record. He had 273 yards passing in these 3 games, 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions, which he's doing in double coverage, I know, a couple of times. I'm not going to give him a grade. He's still on the roster. I think he's a serviceable backup. But we're going to give him, he just didn't play enough to be given a grade, so that's an NG for no grade given. So when you go back and look at this list, folks, of the 20 quarterbacks, we got 10 are not given a grade. We're giving 4 good ones, which is going to be Jake Delhomme, Steve Burling, even Carrick Collins, of course Cam Newton. 2 with a bad grade, Matt Lytle, circumstance more than anything, and Teddy Bridgewater. And then 4 that were given the ugly grade, Will Greer, Chris Winkie, Randy Fasani, and the last one was Jimmy Clausen, of course. Pickles. Terrible. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up. If you like content like this and want to see more, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Hit that bell notification, and we'll see you on the next episode of Carolina Sports Guy.